Hello and welcome to today's robot tip using Robot Console and Alert two-way message response using email. Let's get started. So the two products we're going to talk about today specifically are Robot Console to do message interception and using Robot Alert to send out notification to an email inbox and allow you to reply to that notification via email to respond to the QSYSOPR message. So just as a little review about Robot Console was originally designed to intercept QSYSOPR messages and automate those messages at the source. If those messages cannot be automated using the Robot Console automation, otherwise known as the message set, we then use Robot Alert to escalate to the outside world via email or text message, etc., to engage an interested party who'd be able to reply to that message. One of the options is to be able to send and receive back to Robot an email response, and that email response will be applied to the message waiting in QSYSOPR. Other features of the product are resource monitoring, monitoring jobs, job queues, subsystems, and out queues, and so forth. Monitoring log files, such as the Security Audit Journal, FTP using an exit program, and QHIST, or the display log feature. And then if you're using the graphical interface, you also have the ability to monitor IFS logs. But let's specifically talk about inquiry messages requiring some type of reply or acknowledgement. So specifically what we're going to talk about today is something called OAuth, and that is an authorization method for communicating with multiple vendor products, not just Microsoft, but Google and others. But we're going to specifically talk about OAuth and how it can be used to access a dedicated Office 365 account to retrieve an email, and specifically an email response to a message. So let's look at the flow between Robot Console, Robot Alert, and Office 365. So let's just pretend here that you've received a message in the QSYSOPR message queue, and it requires a reply, a C, an I, or a number. So what happens is Robot Console intercepts that message. If there are no rules here for automating that message, it then will hand off the message to Robot Alert. It will then send the message out using SMTP and whatever authentication method you're using there, TLS, SSL, and so forth. And then when that message is received, the reply to that message will go to a dedicated Office 365 account, and then Robot Alert will then reach into that Office 365 account authorized using OAuth. It will retrieve the reply. It will hand that back off to Robot Console, and Robot Console will apply the reply value back to the message waiting in QSYSOPR. So how does that look? Well, here I've received a message. All right, my member is full. It needs to be incremented. I don't have a rule for it. So I double click or I open the email. I reply to that email however I want to with a single character reply. A tip, don't mess with the subject line because we use this information to match up the original message that was sent to the reply that came back. Your reply value should be found in the first character of the body of your reply. That message is then received by your dedicated Robot Alert account. So here you can see my I showing up in the inbox of my dedicated Robot Alert account. When Robot Alert reaches back into that inbox, now that it's been authorized using OAuth, it also keeps the mailbox nice and clean. If it finds a response in the inbox that matches a message or not, it will then delete the message to keep the inbox nice and clean so you don't have to worry about it getting filled up. So how does OAuth work? I usually wouldn't go into this much detail, But I think it's important for us as an IBM community to understand the Azure community a little bit. Okay, the system requirements, first of all, for Microsoft Azure is that your email or Azure administrator needs to have the rights to your Azure tenant. Okay, also you must have a dedicated email account for Robot Alert, because remember, we're going to be cleaning up the emails as we go, so it can't be an account shared with anybody else. On IBM you need 7.3 of the operating system. You need to be up to date on your cumulative PTFs. You do need the digital certificate. You need Robot Alert 6.03 or higher, and that release came out in May of 2024. And then your IBM needs to be able to communicate with the internet. So from an Azure configuration standpoint, once you get logged into Azure, you're going to go into the what's called the Microsoft Entra ID. And you're going to register what's called an app. So you'll be registering a new app, and you'll be naming that, and you'll see it comes up with a client ID. The client ID is important because that's one of the things you're going to put into Robot Alert's configuration for OAuth. All right. So once that's been registered, you'll see you have a client ID and a tenant ID. You're then going to add a certificate or a secret, and that's the authorization side of things, so that Robot Alert can reach into Azure, into this Robot Alert account using this client secret. So in the process of creating the client secret, you tell Azure how long it is good for. The value will then show up. You need to copy that value, and that's because the value gets obfuscated once it's saved. So you need to copy that. You can always create a new one if you need to, if you didn't get it copied. But this value of the client secret is going to be put into Robot Alert as part of the configuration of OAuth so that it can reach back in to pick up the response to your email. Okay, the other thing about the Azure configuration is that there is an API that you need to be authorized to. All right, so we're going to go to the API permissions. We're going to add a permission to an application, all right, application permission, and the specific API is called mail.readwrite. And that should make sense because you're being authorized to reach in, or Robot Alert is being authorized to reach in to that dedicated Robot Alert account and to be able to read email and write email, meaning delete the email that's there. Once that's been granted, you can then create a new Robot Alert vendor. This one's called Demo Auth. The important thing is to remember service type will be two-way. You'll select OAuth. You'll also see SMTP POP3. For the most part, POP3, that protocol has been deprecated, and that's why we came out with the OAuth option for two-way email. You'll then enter in your outbound SMTP host, and there's various security configurations that you can do there, such as TLS or SSL. And then for the reply to information, that is going to be the email address of your dedicated Robot Alert email account in your Office 360 implementation. Now, when you press enter in the vendor setup, you'll be presented with some additional fields. First of all, the OAuth server name, which will be www.graph.microsoft.com. You'll enter in that tenant ID, the client ID, and the secret ID. A tip on the secret ID is that field will remain blank even after you have pasted in the secret ID. After that, you can create a two-way device, selecting that two-way OAuth vendor. All right, let's do a quick demo. Okay, currently I don't have any inquiry messages waiting here, but we're going to make one happen behind the scenes. Okay, so there is my inquiry message. File increment message, and in the old days we'd put a 5 on it and we'd put a reply in, but in this case what we're going to do is we're going to wait for that message to be sent out to my Robot Alert inbox here in my account. Okay, I can then double click on that message and click on the reply button and then enter in my reply. All right, I could use a number, I could use an I. It all depends on what the valid replies are. I'll put in 5. Now, when I sent that, that message has now arrived here in my dedicated Robot Alert account in Office 365. Robot Alert is going to reach into this inbox now and pick up this response, and it's going to match this response up with the original message. You can see it's now disappeared. And if we go back and look in our QSYSOPR message queue, I'll hit the refresh. All right, it says, look at that, the message got replied to. So it went through that whole path out to Office 365 and back. Now if we look inside of the Robot Console graphical interface and look at the message center for QSYSOPR, I'll go to today's messages, you'll see that message listed here with a status of alert sent reply. So that way you know that the two-way message response did actually reply to that message. And likewise for any message reply, whether alert sent the reply or it was answered inside or outside of Robot Console, you'll see that information listed right here in the reply tab, which is a great audit feature. So I hope that tip was helpful to you. If you have any additional questions, feel free to send an email to info@fortra.com. Have a good day.